So just giving some time for our audience members to file on in. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hope everyone's having a good evening, and depending where you are, that it's not storming too bad. Right now the storm is kind of making its way through Maine, so if any of our presenters lose internet for a moment, we will quickly try and solve that. Hopefully it won't be a problem, but we're aware. So yeah, without any further ado, if it's okay with both of you, I figure let's get started. More people will probably be coming in as we go. Where did I have my intro? There it is. So yeah, hello and thank you everyone for joining us this evening as we celebrate the launch of A Dog-Friendly Town, Josephine Cameron's newest middle grade novel. My name is Stephanie. I am the children's manager at Print a Bookstore in Portland, Maine, and I have just a few things to go over before we jump in onto the event. First, copies of A Dog-Friendly Town are available for sale at Print a Bookstore. Josie will be coming in to sign books later this week, so you can order some signed copies, and we also have copies of Deva's newest book, the Rival Magic, which are also, she's also wonderfully been offering to sign copies of that as well. So I'm dropping a link right now for anyone who would like to order some copies. We are currently offering free curbside pickup to those local to Portland, as well as free shipping on all book orders over $20. Second, if you're joining us from Zoom and look to the bottom of your screen, you can see that there's a Q&A function throughout the event, during their in conversation, and once we open up to the audience questions, you can submit questions there, and that's where we'll be pulling questions from for the audience Q&A. If you're joining us via the Facebook live stream, I'll be checking the comments there, so feel free to comment there. There's just a slight delay in the feed, but I promise I'll get to your questions. And now that all of the busy work is out of the way, it's my utmost pleasure to introduce our authors for this evening. Josephine Cameron grew up writing and singing in northern Wisconsin, but currently lives in Maine, where she writes fiction for young readers and teaches music and songwriting to K-8 students. Josephine received her MFA in creative writing from the University of Notre Dame. Her song, Long Track Blues, was included in the New York Times bestseller, Hip Hop Speaks to Children, a book/CD set edited by Nikki Giovanni. Her debut novel, Maybe a Mermaid, was published in 2019 by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, Books for Young Readers, which is an imprint of Macmillan. And Deva Fagan, who is our in conversation today, wanted to be a lot of things in her life: astronomer, comic book artist, baker, mathematician, Celtic fiddler, Time Lord, don't we all? But most of all, she wanted to tell stories, because that way she could have it all. She could write about witches and fortune tellers and intergalactic travelers, and now she does. Her most recent book is Rival Magic, a middle grade novel where a young wizard's apprentice discovers that the best magic is not the biggest or the brightest, but the magic unique to you. And now, without further ado, I'm going to pass the proverbial mic along to our talent this evening, and I'm so excited to hear your conversation. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's so exciting. It's funny, Deva, because last year we were at Print Bookstore celebrating the release of my first book, Maybe a Mermaid. And it was really fun because we got to have, everybody in person, which we don't get to do now. But at the same time, like, I'm checking out this little webinar chat on the side, and I see not only like some of my students who were able to be in person last year, but also like sisters and friends from far away, and Debbie from Connecticut, and so this is kind of cool that we get to do it online. It sort of makes it so that we can celebrate with people from all over, which is nice. And I wanted to thank both Print and Deva for helping with this celebration today. Deva and I thought that we would just sort of talk about the book and ask, sort of have a little chit chat about writing and Dog-Friendly Town in particular. And And Deva, did you want to say anything to begin with, or I thought one of the things we might do is just sort of read a little bit of it before we start, but what do you think?
I think that's a great idea. I'll just quickly, before you do that, say my own thanks to everyone who's here and to you, Josie, for inviting me to be a part of your big day. And I'm just so excited that we get to celebrate this book with so many people because it's so fun and charming, and I'm just so glad it's in the world. So congratulations, Josie, and let's get to it. Let's hear some of it.
All right, let's get to it. So, I invited Deva to help me celebrate because we both had books that came out this spring. Well, A Dog-Friendly Town was originally going to come out this spring, and we were going to do this all together in May, but because of the pandemic, everything got pushed to August. But Deva's book, Rival Magic, is so fun, and it is about friendship. So I loved inviting you for this because this book, to me, had some of the similar themes of like friendship, and people aren't always who you think they are, and you kind of have to look around like your first impressions of things. And it's a really cool book. So I'm excited that we get to celebrate together because I feel like they are both adventures that are about friendship and family and figuring out.
And there's mysteries in both.
And mysteries in both, exactly, right? And figuring out how to see the world from other people's points of view and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. So A Dog-Friendly Town is about the McDade family. And Epic McDade is the main character, and he is about to go into 7th grade, and he is very nervous about going into 7th grade. He really loved his elementary school. He's going to have to leave his 2 siblings. Rondo is his younger brother, and Elvis is his younger sister. And he's going to have to go to a new school all on his own. So that's sort of where we begin this book. But the McDade family run a dog-friendly bed and breakfast called the Perro del Mar. And their town is so dog-friendly. They have all kinds of things that are set up to make things lovely for dogs, like leash-free beaches and canine water fountains, things like that. And so they get, the town gets this award of America's #1 dog-friendly town. And so that means that all these different guests and celebrity dogs are coming to stay at the Perro del Mar for the summer. And that's all wonderful until things get a little carried away on lots of levels. And one of the celebrity dogs, $500,000 dog collars goes missing. And the McDade siblings need to figure out who took the collar. So I thought, just to kind of get you a little bit of an idea of the siblings and the place, I'm just going to read a page and a half, just a quick little thing. If you want to hear me read the full first chapter, I actually recorded a video of myself reading the first chapter and giving a little of the background of the inspiration. And you can find that on my website at josephinecameron.com. And it's on the activities page. There's actually a bunch of stuff. Epic loves to tinker and create little gadgets, and my brother helped me put together some videos of how to make the little gadgets that he makes in this book. So the first chapter, which I think it's kind of perfect, we've got this dark and stormy night going on in Maine. It's pouring, and so the first chapter is called The Crime. Madeline Devine's scream was loud enough to wake my younger brother, Rondo, and that's saying something. I've tried every trick in the book, flicking his ear, shaking his bunk, dripping cold water on his face, and I've never seen Rondo get out of bed that fast. For a 4th grader, my brother attracts trouble on a professional level. I'm sure Madeline's scream triggered his curiosity and sucked him out of bed with the force field of a rare earth magnet, which meant I was going to have to do the responsible older brother thing and find a way to drag him back. With all 5 rooms of the Perro del Mar bed and breakfast occupied, a celebrity in room 3, and now one of our guests having a meltdown in the middle of the night, the last thing Mom and Dad needed was Rondo roaming the halls like a magnetized electron on the loose. I pulled the warm blankets up to my chin and calculated how long I could wait for him to come back on his own. Maybe he was just in the bathroom. I could close my eyes for another 90 seconds at least. I'd barely let them shut when my sister Elvis rolled out of the bottom bunk, padded across the room, and aimed her morning breath straight into my nostrils. Epic, are you awake? Is this a dream? I kept my eyes closed and wished we were stuck in one of my sister's legendary nightmares. But Madeline was still screaming, and the barking dogs and slamming doors in the guest wing were a dead giveaway that this was real life. Elvis's nightmares are usually set underwater or on some alien planet, never at home at the Perro del Mar. This is exactly like an episode of Bentley Knows. That's Elvis's favorite show, starring a dog named Sir Bentley. She shook my shoulder. If there's a crime happening right now, I bet Sir Bentley will solve it. Wouldn't that be exciting? We should go downstairs so we can watch. Do you think? Or should we wait? How long does detectiving take? Epic, are you dead? My sister was breathing fast and talking nonsense. She was probably still half asleep. I held up 2 fingers, the Sunny Day Academy signal, to take a deep breath and chill out. There's no crime, Elle. Give me a minute, I said. I'm waiting for Rondo. Of course, the first chapter is called The Crime, and there is a crime.
That's great, Josie. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, shall we get to chatting?
Yeah, that
Up
sounds
for me
good.
to ask you some questions. So, I know for me, when I hear writers talking about their work, one of the first things I'm always interested in is just like, how do they do their creative work? Like, do you write every day? Do you like tell us more about how you actually do your work? What's it like to be you, Josie, the writer?
Yeah. I do work pretty consistently. I write, I teach piano lessons during the school year. And I noticed on my little, on our chat here, I've got a couple of students. I see Jayen and Anjali and Isaac. It's very cool. So that's usually during the school year. That's what I'm doing in the afternoons and evenings. So that means I have my mornings to write. And when I'm starting a book, I don't know about you. I'd be interested to hear about your process. I have some guesses, but for me, I do a ton of pre-writing. So I know like some of my friends who are writers, they get an idea and they immediately want to just start writing and discovering the characters and you know, as they're going along and discover what's going to happen as they're going along. I am much more of a planning kind of person. I mean, you can sort of see up in my room.
That's cool.
You get to kind of be in my workspace and I've got my Post-its there. And I don't know if you can see, but in my closet, I have a nice little whiteboard with all of my checklists and everything. So I spend probably months, literally months, like just thinking of ideas and ideas for characters and timelines and, okay, what if this happens, then this happens? Nope, I'm going to change that order. I've got, especially for this book, which was a mystery, I had spreadsheets and like little color-coded little charts of what was going to happen, and you know, every character
wow.
has their color. And I have little I made a map of the inside of the dog friendly hotel so that I could actually keep track of who was in what room. And of course, it all changes as you're going along. Like I've noticed on this map, I have Mrs. Winchester in room 4. Well, there's no Mrs. Winchester in this book anymore. And I had to redraw the map. So a lot of times, like when I'm writing, I'm not doing what everybody imagines your job is when you're a writer, that you know, I'm not actually writing words on the page yet, right? So a lot of times I'm imagining and planning and researching. And then the cool thing is then when you do start writing, and so if it's a lesson day, I usually can get in about 3 hours of writing in the morning. When it's not a lesson day, I usually write anywhere from 6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
And then, but once you start, and I'll have my whole outline, and I think, I know exactly how it's going to go. And then something happens as I'm going along, and I get a different idea. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that's better. And then I'll have to go back and change and re-outline. Do you do that? Do you?
Oh,
change?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, I have iterative outlines where the first outline that I write for a book looks very little like the final one. Usually the end is the same, but a lot of the middle usually changes.
That happens to me too. Always the ending is how I wanted it to be. That happened with this book. It happened with maybe a mermaid, but it's the little twists and turns getting to the end that sometimes sort of take on their own life.
So because this was a mystery, did you actually figure out the details of the mystery and like who did it? And I mean, the clues and all of that ahead of time?
I totally
And did it stay the same, or did Mrs. Winchester do it originally?
Surprisingly, so that was one of the big surprises to me, was like, okay, so the ending still happens the way I thought it was going to end. But there are a couple things that happen, and I can't say because it's a spoiler, but there's one big thing that happens in the middle that literally I was writing it, and I had already gotten about, over half of the way through the book. And as I was about to write the next scene, I was like, oh no, I didn't know that person did that. It just like seems so silly because it's my own brain, so of course I'm in charge, but yet so it's too much of a spoiler to explain, but if any of you read it and you finish reading it and you want to know what the big reveal thing was that happened in the middle, that totally took me by surprise, I am happy to then share. You can always email me and contact me from my website.
Well, I'm going to ask you after we're off the Zoom. Because now I'm curious.
In Rival Magic, anything that changed?
What's that?
I said in Rival Magic.
Oh, yeah. A lot of it changed. So Rival Magic is about these two competing girl apprentices who are wizards, and that was always there. That was the heart of the book, and that's usually the thing that stays the same for me. A book comes to me as a premise usually, and the premise was two girls, one who's really dedicated to learning magic from books and the other who's innately talented, and they have to work together, but they don't like each other. But like a lot of other stuff changed, and it was primarily stuff where in my first versions it was not nearly as like magical and whimsical, and so a lot of things like I added in later, like I added mermaids and I added an enchanted ferret and I added this spooky voice stealing creature, and so like a lot of the magic stuff I put in later.
That's awesome.
And I'm glad I did, because that's always fun to write. I don't know why I didn't put it in originally.
Well, and it might be the kind of stuff, it's sort of like I did not plan any of the sort of like dog-friendly elements, right? That's sort of the stuff
really?
Discover.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I started subscribing to Bark magazine. Just so I could see like the advertisements and the language, right? And
not to look at all the cute dogs.
And also to look at all those super cute dogs. Oh my gosh, they have an email subscription that you can sign up for that I still have that's called Smiling Dogs. And it's just every day or so you get pictures of smiling dogs in your email inbox. It's kind of the greatest. But yeah, it was like all that fun stuff, right? The like, the doggy tattoos and like all the like really silly pampery stuff. the woofy waffles that they serve at the bed and breakfast, and that stuff kind of comes as you're writing. I think it's like I don't know, like you said, all the fun stuff. You've got to get the outline is like for the logistics and the nuts and bolts.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So, can you maybe? I'd love to hear more about how you came up with the idea for a dog-friendly town. Like, what was it that really made you want to write the book, and what is it that you hope readers will find in it?
Yeah. So I also, for this one, I don't always come up with a story from a premise, but I do often get a story idea from place. So like a lot of people start with a character or a story idea, and for me, like both with Maybe a Mermaid and Dog Friendly Town, I had the place in my head before I had the story. But my husband grew up in Southern California, and his family is mostly all still out there, and we go to visit them usually at least once a year if we can. And we were visiting his Aunt Joey and Uncle Jim, and they took us, they love to go to this really, really sweet town called Carmel. And it is a dog-friendly town. It has like almost all the shops have a little dog bowl with water and treats, and like there's a really cool shop there that's just like so much cool stuff for dogs, and a dog bakery, and like it's just a very dog-friendly town. And we were driving through, and Aunt Joey said, did you know that Carmel just got awarded Dogtown USA for being America's most dog-friendly town? And this was years ago, and I remember grabbing my notebook. I was in the back seat, and I just grabbed my notebook, and I was like, dog-friendly town, middle grade novel. Like I didn't know what was going to happen there. I just wanted a story set in a place like that so badly. And like 2 minutes later, when we kept driving, I just wrote down jewel heist. I don't know why. I was like, what could be fun that could happen in a dog?
Wow.
And then I was working on Maybe a Mermaid and doing other things, so I didn't really think about it until later, and I came across that note. So that was sort of like the inspiration for the place. And then I wonder if this is the same for you, but once you start sort of developing a story and thinking about, okay, well, if it's going to be this dog-friendly town and it's going to be some sort of a jewel thief type situation, who would live there, right? Who would live there? And then you start thinking about the characters. And so I was thinking, it's so interesting. This is another parallel that I found with Rival Magic, because I was thinking when I wrote this book a lot of me and my brother when we were kids. And I was always the book girl, and always the straightforward learner. Like, I'm going to learn from a textbook, I'm going to read about it, I'm going to find the rules, and I'm going to follow those rules and do it exactly, right? And my brother was the exact opposite. He's like the poster child for learn by doing style of learning, right? And so he would just he'd be like, let's take it apart and see how it works. So like, I always remember when we would get a board game, and it was always a fight the minute we got the board game, because he would want to open it up and just play it, make it up as you go along. Who cares? Do it. And I would want to read every single instruction, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, you're killing me, right? And so I was thinking about that sort of dichotomy and that sort of difference in how we learning styles and how we learn, and also that willingness to sort of just follow your curiosity and try things and build things. And so it was interesting in like, I guess you could say, training for writing the book. I also started teaching myself how to do some little electronic tinkering and make little robots and brush bots and things like that. And my inclination was to read the instructions and, you know, find out how you're supposed to do it. And I thought my brother would never do it like that. Ellen would never do it like that. Like, try it, trial and error. And so I tried really hard to sort of get into that mindset when I was writing Epic's character, because Epic kind of straddles the line, my main character. He's sort of, he wants to follow the rules, but he's also very creative and follows his curiosity. And so he feels like he's caught in the middle a little bit. And his younger siblings are much more in my brother's style of just like, throw caution to the wind and go with your gut kind of thing. So,
yeah, I found it particularly interesting and moving, the element of the book where Epic is sort of struggling with this transition to this new school. I think that's something that I mean, I haven't been in elementary school or middle school in a long, long time, but I remember that feeling of whenever you would start, if you moved or if you just transition to a different school, it's a big deal. And he's moving from this very sort of, would you call it hippie-ish kind of, or new agey a little bit?
Experiential, right?
Feel good, non-traditional, how about that?
Yeah.
Non-traditional school to a more mainstream school. And that's something that he's definitely struggling with over the course of this book. And I found that element really, you know, something that echoes my own experiences just with, I think all kids probably struggle with their place in a school. Did you yourself have a school experience that was like, what was it, Sunny Day?
Sunny Day. I didn't have a school experience like that, but I did have the transition feelings that Epic has. So I went to elementary school at a very, very tiny, very like, you know, some of the teachers really, but in general, like super warm, right? School. And I remember, so our school went K through 6. And I remember being in 6th grade, getting that summer between 6th grade and 7th grade. 7th and 8th grade, you had to go to the next town over. And there were 5 different towns that all combined into this junior high. And so it was leaving that, like, I mean, I had known these kids that I was in school with since kindergarten. And then you had to all go over to this new school with 5 more towns of kids. It was still small because it was northern Wisconsin, but all of my friends were so excited they couldn't wait. I mean, not all of them, but like we definitely had friends who were so excited to grow up and so excited to be in junior high and so excited to like expand their horizons and meet new people and have new sports. And in fact, they would have skipped junior high and go straight to high school if they could have. They just wanted to be like grown up, you know? And I just liked it how it was. I didn't want it to change. I didn't want to leave my younger siblings. I didn't want to like start this new, bigger, just different, sort of more grown-up world. I was like, what's wrong with childhood?
Yeah, that I felt a lot of the same feelings too. It's scary because you suddenly end up in this new environment and people are expecting you to be a different person, but you're still the same person. And
right. Exactly. I still liked stuffed animals and like, you know, yeah. So I think it's interesting because when you're writing a novel, at least for me, this is true. People will always ask, like, which character are you the most like, or, you know, which one is you, or things like that. But I find when I'm writing, almost everybody has, like, a little bit of my personality or experience, just a different little bit of it. Does that happen to you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like, there will always be characters that I identify with more strongly, but I think that I think a good book shows you different facets of yourself in all the characters, like you just said. And I think definitely I see that in A Dog Friendly Town, just with all of the different siblings in the family and the different friends, Declan and Lainey. So,
Yeah.
or Lane, sorry.
Yeah.
Mion.
Absolutely. Mion. Lane is Mion's dog.
Yeah, I keep saying the dog name instead of the person name. Because of course I care about the people as much as I care about the dogs.
That was really hard. Like, this book had so many characters in it, and then all the characters had a dog. And so it was like you had, and I even had, I think I cut 5 or 6 characters out as I was going along. But it was so many people and dogs to keep track of, and you'd get a scene where there were a bunch of people all in the same place. Yeah. And I felt like I had to be like a movie director or something, like, but wait, where's this person and where's that? And the dogs and the it got really overwhelming.
Well, I liked that there was always there was the dog and their person, so it actually helped me to keep everyone straight, because I was like, okay, they're the person with the silly little Brady cat dog.
Right, exactly. It's when you get really grateful for like a good editor who will tell you, okay, there's too many people in this scene, take some of them out or move them away, right? Yeah. And also a good book designer. That was one of my favorite things about the book, was that after it had been all finished, they thought, oh my gosh, there are a lot of characters that it can be a little hard to keep track of everyone. And so the book designer came up with the great idea to put in the front of the book illustrations of everyone's, like, here are the people in room 1, here are the people in room 2. And that way, if you are like, wait, which dog was this? Who did that belong to? You could go back to the beginning and look at the picture. And it was fun to see those characters come alive. Yeah. It was really cool.
I loved that. I spent a long time looking at the photos, the illustrations at the beginning before I read it. And I sort of kept my finger there, and I kept going back. And I was excited to meet there were pictures of characters that I was excited to meet. So I was like, oh, when are they going to meet this? Is it an English bulldog, Morrissey?
Asking us to pull up, right? So, for instance, we can see the friends. There's Lane, who is a surfing dog, and Mion that Deva was just talking about, and then each of the guests get their own little character illustration. It's really fun.
It's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a student who asked me, did the illustrations turn out exactly like you imagined them in your head? And I laughed because I was like, I don't know. I don't really imagine them in my head. Do you know what your characters really look like?
No, I've never been a person who uses shows does movie cast for Max. I love seeing it when other people do it, though. And I love whenever I'm lucky enough to get actual fan art, if anyone draws characters, that's always really fun, because that's the best thing, is to see what a reader thinks the characters look like.
Right, which is almost more important than what I think the character looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, totally. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's really cool.
So I'm not going to ask you which character you're most like, but I'm going to ask you which dog was your favorite dog to write in the book.
I have a really soft spot for Pico. Pico is the dog in room 1. The Boons are these guests who've been staying at the Pera del Mar for a whole year. They just like it so much and they never leave. But Pico is an Italian greyhound, and he's incredibly nervous and stressed out. He does not love change, and I have a lot of Pico in my personality. So I'll show you, actually. I think I have it here. When this is the one character that I did have. So I was saying I don't normally know what I think they look like, but when I was researching Italian greyhounds, I came across this picture and I had it up the whole time I was writing because it was just like so perfect what I imagined Pico to look like.
Yeah, he's even wearing clothes like Pico does.
So I did actually have a photo of each dog that I thought. I never do that for people.
Well, dog photos are much more relevant than human photos.
Yeah. And fun to Google.
Can you tell I'm a dog person?
That reminds me, by the way, of the dog, being a dog person. I know that Stephanie from the bookstore had said that when you guys are asking, that you guys can ask questions at a certain point. And I noticed that we can't, it's not, some Zooms you can like see everybody on the screen, and I noticed that on this one we can't. So if you happen to have a dog with you, and I thought we were going to be able to like see the dogs and say hello, but if you happen to have a dog with you who wants to participate, go ahead and when you ask your question, tell us your dog's name and what type of dog you have, and we will make sure to say hello to the dog or cat, right? I mean, you know, we're not.
Yes, we're equal opportunity fluff lovers. Iguanas, birds.
Totally. Turtles, we'll take it.
Yeah. So here's a question I had that I'm curious what the answer will be. So also read and really enjoyed Maybe a Mermaid, which was your debut novel, which hopefully everyone who's watching this has read. But if you haven't, definitely check that one out too, because it's also really rich in whimsy and humor, but also an exploration of a lot of meaningful emotional issues. And friendship is a big part of that one. So I'm actually wondering whether the main character of that, Anthony, how she would get along with the characters in A Dog-Friendly Town.
That's a good question. I think it's interesting. I think in some ways, like, Anthony and Epic would see eye to eye because they are both very like logical, planning type people. They care deeply about being like, you know, sort of, Anthony is really trying hard to find a true friend, but she has to figure out sort of how to be a true friend herself first, right? And Epic has a little bit of that struggle too in how to sort of navigate his friendship with Declan. But I do think that she would be overwhelmed by Epic's siblings. They are so such outside the box thinkers, and they are so spontaneous, right? In a way that Anthony, like, she's got her 5-year plan. She's got her checklist of, you know, how she thinks she's going to do in order to find a true blue friend. I think Epic's siblings would really stress her out, but I do think she would learn to love them.
Excellent. I kind of imagine them all living in the same world, just in different parts of the world. So maybe they'll meet.
That would be awesome.
So I don't know how much longer you want to spend talking, but I have a couple other questions I could ask. How are you feeling, Josie?
We could do a couple more questions and then maybe see if other people have any questions, and it looks like
okay, yeah, in about 5 minutes it looks like, maybe.
Perfect.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so here's one of my questions that I hope it's not a too strange question, but I started thinking about the dog-friendly B&B, and it started me thinking about all sorts of other B&Bs that there might be in the world. So I'm curious, if you were going to run a bed and breakfast that had a theme, what would the theme of your bed and breakfast be?
Okay, I will answer this, but then will you also answer it?
Sure.
All right, okay. So what theme bed and breakfast would I have? I mean, there's like the logical, of course I would do it answer, which is that I would clearly have like a bookish bed and breakfast where, you know, everything is filled with books and you could get your book recommendation every day. And, you know, I mean, it's my favorite thing, right? But if
all the food would be shaped like books.
Yes, exactly. Or from books, right? So you'd have like all the food.
Yeah.
The gingerbread from Emily Dickinson and like,
I
right?
would stay there.
Stuff like that. But if I had like unlimited budget and you could just have like the coolest bed and breakfast theme, I would probably do like, you ever been to like the Baltimore Aquarium and you have some of those rooms where you're just, they're all glass, but you're basically in an aquarium. Like you could have the squid room and the jellyfish room, right? And there's just like, you could just be surrounded. That would be pretty rad.
Oh, wow. I want to stay there too. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Well, what bed and breakfast theme would you do?
Well, so my first instinct, because of my background, is that it would be like a magic academy, you know?
Yes.
I mean, that's where I would want to go. I have to admit it. That's why I write my books about people learning magic, is because I want to go to a school and learn magic. It doesn't have to be Hogwarts. Lots of magical schools throughout the history of kids literature. Yeah, so some sort of magic school where you could like have adventures and dress up in costumes.
Ooh. That's awesome.
Have little adventures while you're staying there. Sort of like a murder mystery, but not a murder, just a mystery.
Yeah, that would be, I would go.
So there'd be like a story and a plot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, well, I want to stay at your aquarium bed and breakfast and your giant library bed and breakfast as well.
Excellent. Well,
and as a dog owner, of course, I wish that there was a dog-friendly B&B somewhere that we could go to.
So I forgot to mention, there is
in
Carmel.
Okay.
I mean, there are actually several.
Not right now, but yeah.
Yes, but in Carmel, there's a place called the Cypress Inn. I got to go there for dinner a couple times with Aunt Joey and Uncle Jim. And it's co-owned, it was co-owned before she passed away recently by the singer and actress and animal activist Doris Day. And it's incredible. Like you go in and the most well-behaved dogs on the planet are staying there and they eat at the dinner table with the other family members and they have things you can order. It's amazing. So I did lots of research on the dog-friendly bed and breakfast scene. It's pretty cool. Should we open to see Stephanie?
We'll wait for the questions to magically appear somewhere here.
I definitely want to go to all of these bed and breakfasts, especially one where I can like have a library but also be inside of a magical aquarium. Like, that's
combine them all.
Yeah. So we do have a couple of questions before we jump into audience questions, and also encourage more people to let us know what they're thinking. I have a question for myself, Josie. So Maybe Mermaid, if people have read that one, has this kind of rundown hotel resort type place, and now we're in a dog-friendly town, and once again we're looking at this bed and breakfast. This is a hotel. I'm noticing a theme, and I'm wondering, like, is there something particular about this setting that interests you? Is there something from your past that makes you want to explore these areas?
I have to say, so when I was drafting a dog-friendly town, I think I got all the way to the end, and my husband, Kevin, and my sister, Anna, are both writers, and they are always my first readers, and they help me so much to get my books sort of shaped up. And I remember sending it to them and saying, oh my gosh, you guys, I just set another book at a hotel. Do I have to change it? What did I do that for? And also, like, water sports are also in this one. I have no real explanation other than I grew up in a giant family of 5 siblings, so there were 8 people in the house, and there were always people coming and going and staying overnight, and who knows, maybe I'm just used to having so many people around that writing about one small family didn't feel big enough, but it surprised me. It's funny, like, so many writers have this where, like, once you've written a few books, you suddenly realize, oh wait, there's some similarities here. Yep, I noticed that too, but not until I finished writing the book. So,
well, I think it makes for a great setting. Definitely lets you introduce a lot of interesting characters. So we have a question that I personally don't understand, but maybe I'm assuming you might understand it more. Anjali is wondering if your book is out on Curtis.
Oh, I understand what that means. Anjali is one of my dear students, and Curtis is our local library. And thank goodness for all the local libraries, right? Our library just reopened recently to the public, but they have been doing curbside pickup for months and making sure that books can get into people's hands, and the librarians there have been amazing. But Anjali, I am not 100% certain if they have it yet. I know that some libraries have gotten it in, but I also know some things have been slow with shipping and stuff, so I'm not 100% certain, but I know that everyone over there is like so on it and good at their job that they'll have it as soon as they can.
Also, always the best thing is to request it, to maybe give a little bit nudge if they don't have it yet.
Good call.
Yeah, so Jessie Chalmers is wondering if there will be a dog-friendly town movie. Can you picture it on big screen?
And I'm guessing that this might be Jayenne Chalmers asking this question, or Jayenne Coffin, who is also one of my dear students. That would be so incredibly fun, right? It's interesting because you never know with things like this, right? It's very unusual to have a book made into a movie. It only happens for a very, very small number, but you always have hope, right? And to me, it would be especially fun if it was animated. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, especially with all the illustrations of the characters already. That'd be really cute.
Exactly.
But also, if you got a chance to like hang out on a movie set where there was a bunch of dogs, like not
also
a bad second
very
option.
Fun.
I think we have probably our most important question of the evening from Lil Boss the puppy. Woof woof grrr, meow woof. Lil Boss's human has offered a translation that says, "What's some of the best writing advice you've ever got? Also, are there any cats in your book?"
2 excellent questions, Little Boss. I'm glad you asked. I wonder if Little Boss is asking this because they are hoping there are cats or hoping there are not cats in the book. I'm not sure, but we shall see. I don't think there's a single cat in the book, first of all. The best writing advice I had ever gotten. So I get asked this question a lot, and I've always answered it differently than I'm going to answer today because it just hit me about 2 days ago. Well, Friday, I turned in the revision for my 3rd book, my next book, which is called The Heroes Club. It's going to be out next May. And while I was writing the revision, I suddenly remembered this genius piece of advice that one of my college professors, Professor Walton, gave me. And I had written the whole first draft of a novel, and he said, when you are revising this, right? So, when I revised A Dog Friendly Town, I had to take out a whole bunch of characters, and you have to think about better ways to make the mystery come together. And he said, when you're revising, don't try to make up a whole bunch of new stuff and add it. Use what's already there. You've got all this stuff already there. Just use what's there and make it even more magnified. And so there are all kinds of little things where, oh, I need this person to go to a different location. Well, it doesn't need to be. I've already written this whole book. It doesn't need to be a new location. Use a location that's already there, or use an emotion that's already there. Or if they're going to have like this really, intense scene, use some conversations that they've already had, so it's still then part of what they're thinking about. So I don't know, I've never said that answer to this question before, but this last week I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, instead of just adding a bunch of new stuff, when you're rewriting, use what's already there.
That's really good advice. So Debbie Michigo Florence, who is another excellent kidlit writer, very excited to see her in the audience tonight, was wondering how you come up with your characters' names. Look at that! It's like you knew.
Debbie's new book is Keep It Together, Keiko Carter, and you should all check this one out too. I'm sure they have it at print if you would like to order it. Anyway, how do I come up with characters' names? Eva, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this too. I find that sometimes the names just are part of who that character is. Like the minute I'm thinking of the character, with Epic, Elvis, and Rondo, the three siblings, I don't know why, because they are bizarre names, but the minute I thought of these characters, I just knew those were their names. And then for other characters, I will be rethinking, and I'll change their name for no reason. In this last book, The Heroes Club, I had a character. I changed that person's name, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times in the last month. No reason. What's the difference? Like, just Kenny didn't seem right. And then, you just come up with these different names and they just didn't seem like they were fitting until you come up with just the right name. And I don't have sort of a method. It's a lot by feel for me. How about you, Deva? Do you have?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh.
So usually, because I write a lot of fantasy set in a fictional made-up world, I have some sort of real-world analog that's inspiring it. So in Rival Magic, it's roughly Mediterranean, kind of like Sicily or Greece, that kind of part of the world. And so a lot of the names are vaguely inspired by Italian names or Latin names or Greek names. And then I just will keep lists of words from those backgrounds and look at them. But same as you, though, a lot of times there are certain characters that the name will just be like, that's who they are.
Yeah, I get really attached to the names. Like in Maybe a Mermaid, when I first started thinking about that book, when I was doing all like my pre-writing and not writing anything, it was about a young boy named Anthony. And when I decided, oh, actually this character is a girl, I just still really liked the name and I couldn't let go of it because I had been thinking of that character as Anthony this whole time, and so I just kept the name.
And it's a good name.
And it's a good name.
It is a really good name. I always liked the fact that you had a leading lady named Anthony. It's very cute. So Juliet Noldender was wondering, do you have dogs?
Oh, Juliet, excellent question. Thanks for coming. I had a childhood dog and a childhood cat, Trixie and Kitty. And Trixie was the best dog on the planet, and Kitty slept in my bed every night, and like we all hung out all the time. And I was constantly sick, and I missed 60 days of school in 6th grade from being sick so often. And then I went to college and I wasn't sick anymore. And we finally realized that I was allergic to Trixie and Kitty. So I don't have a dog at the moment, but my husband wants one so badly. And we've talked about it a lot over the years. And it is actually part of why I wrote A Dog Friendly Town, was to give him a whole bunch of dogs to hang out with, because he reads and edits all of my work anyway. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give him the coolest dogs I can find to hang out with and hopefully make him laugh. And so that was a big reason I even wrote this book, to have some fun imaginary dogs to hang out with.
I hope that they filled that gap for him.
For a little bit, probably.
Our next question is something that I would love to hear both of your responses to is, have you ever gotten writer's block? And for those people who don't know what that is, it's when you're stuck writing a part of the book while you're writing.
For me, and then I'd love to hear Deva's answer, I get stuck fairly often. I think of it less as writer's block. It's not like I don't think I can figure out what the problem is. I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, why do I get stuck, right? And I think a lot of it is I get nervous, like my little dog Pico, get really stressed out and anxious and feel like, what if I'm doing it wrong? Or I don't usually have the type of writer's block where I'm like, I have no idea what to write next. And I think that's because I do so much planning. But I do have the writer's block of, I can't possibly write today because I don't know that it's going to be any good. I worry that it's not going to be any good. And then that stops me. And my strategy for getting over that is simply to accept and realize, right, maybe it won't be any good, right? I might write this and it might not be any good. And all those fears that I have might be true, but I'm still going to do the best that I can and try and write it to the best of my ability. And then maybe once it's written, then later I can go back and make it better. And so for me, that tends to be my personal form of writer's block. Deva, what kind of writer's block do you get?
I get two different kinds of writer's block. The first is if I'm literally too tired and too overworked, and I just need an actual break from writing altogether because I've drained my resources. And I can usually tell when that happens because even when I sit down to work, I just sort of stare at the screen. And, well, there's another kind of writer's block where I also just stare at the screen. But I over my years of experience, one of the main things you learn as a writer is how to identify your different types of writer's block for me. So the other type, which is more common, which is when I have outlined a scene and I get to it and I suddenly just hate it and I don't want to write it, but I don't know what I want to write instead. And I keep trying to write the scene I have planned, but I'm disgusted by it and I don't want to sit down and work. And what that means for me is that I'm too in the mindset of this is what I had planned and I have to do it. And somewhere along the way, what I had planned is no longer the right thing that makes organic sense and that is natural for the characters. And so I'm trying to force the characters to do something that doesn't make sense anymore. And so what I need to do in that case, after I bang my head against the computer a little bit, is to usually go back to the last point in the book where I actually feel good about it and then cut everything that I've put in and let myself be free to envision what would happen next if I wasn't being constrained by that outline anymore. And then usually it ends up being something that's very similar to what I had planned. It's just different in some small way, but that way is like the key to unlocking the scene. Like the last time I got stuck, what I needed to do in the book that I'm working on now, which is a book for 2022, I needed to add a magical skeleton that made bad poetry. And once I added that to the scene, I had no more writer's block.
Adding something fun is a really
Yeah.
good way to stop writer's block. Like just adding something fun and silly and off the wall. It's like,
Yeah.
and suddenly you're caught up and you've forgotten about like whatever the source of the block was, right? I like that.
Right.
Would you say that that skeleton was your key?
Yes. Actually, I wasn't clever enough to say that, so points to you.
Then we have one last question for the evening, and that is, Josie, how do you think the dogs at Perro del Mar would be spending all of their time at home right now? Are they being possumly mischievous, or are they taking a lot of catnips?
I think they are living the dream. Honestly, one of my friends was saying just this week that he thinks that the dogs have arranged this whole pandemic because all of the humans are at home pampering them and paying attention to them and playing with them and spending all of their time together instead of leaving and going to work and school. So I think they're doing all of the above. I think they're being pawfully mischievous. I think they are taking cat naps. I think they are just living their best lives.
As we all should be.
Exactly.
Well, thank you to you both for being a part of this evening. It was great to hear your conversation and to learn so much more about both of your creative writing processes and to hear some little sneak peeks about what's coming ahead. Josie, I'm very curious to hear how you fit a hotel into your superhero club.
I'm gonna have to work on that.
And thank you, as always, to our lovely audience for being a part of this as well, for sharing your questions. We really appreciate having you all part of our virtual community. It's been great, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thanks to Print Bookstore too, and thank you, Deva.
Yes, thank you, Print. Thank you, Josie.
Good to see you.
All right.